Hello, hello, hello. How we doing? What's going on, people? How you feel today? Day after another draw. I'll be honest, guys. I feel a little down, man. I feel a little down, and I'm trying to pull myself out of it, but I just feel a little bit down right now about the situation with this club. And obviously, look, there's plenty of reasons over these last some years to feel down about things with United, and many reasons, but there's just reasons why. There's just things that, you have to sit and say, it's always to me about the future. It's always to me about the future. If I feel like I can see a path for the future, I can get behind it. I can be positive. I can feel encouraged. I can look at it and go, I've got some hope, and I've got some desire to see improvement and things like that. But right now I'm struggling, to be honest. Right now I'm absolutely struggling a bit for a lot more than just the idea of like, yeah, okay, we've sacked a manager or something like that. Like it's a lot bigger than that. It's a lot more than that. It's the matter of like how it calls into question so many things. Like let's take this situation right now, because I want to talk here first today about what we're doing right now in terms of even picking even picking this interim manager. I'm looking at it day by day, and I'm going, we don't have a plan. You know what I mean? I know the thumbnail's McKenna. I'm aware. We're going to talk about future managers too. Because I'm not just talking about interims. I'm talking about future managers as well. I'm talking about what we're doing now and what they have to do before picking their future manager, of which McKenna will be an option. We'll talk about that. It's like I'm looking at this. I'm looking at this even this interim process where we're at right now, and I'm thinking, there's no invention. The names are names any of us could have picked, right? They can't decide. It's dragging out days. We're reacting day by day to how did Fletcher do against Burnley. Now, Fletcher, as it stands right now, which to be fair, was what I would have done in the beginning, was just say, instead of, let's just let Fletcher manage the team. Why change? I said last night, don't rush to it. But I think the point is that that's my own feeling. I'm looking at it and going, it genuinely feels like we're trying to make a decision day by day. How do we feel today? How do we feel tomorrow? How do we feel the next day? How do we feel the day after that? If Fletcher loses versus Brighton, you're gonna change it then. You're gonna go hire somebody. You know what I mean? That's how it feels. And I go, this is not a high-level planning. This is not high-level planning. You know what I mean? There should be a decisiveness. We shouldn't be giving Fletcher the job. For example, we shouldn't be giving Fletcher the job on the basis of what happens in one or game or the next, because managers don't have that much care, don't have that much impact.
I understand why you feel down, James. It seems like the club don't take the sporting project seriously and are winging it. Make a plan, stay with it.
Yeah, well, and this is the point I'm making, is like, you know who Fletcher is already. You know what I mean? We don't. We've never seen Fletcher manage a team. We've seen him manage the under-18s, but internally, you already know who he is. You already know what his ideas are. You already know what kind of person he is. You already know him. You shouldn't make a decision the decision can't be based off of one game at a time. This is not good management. It's not. Because managers don't have that much of an effect on a team. Where one game, what if we had a good game against Burnley? If we have a bad game against Brighton, is it Fletcher's fault? Does anybody think that if we lose to Brighton, it'll be Fletcher's fault? Anyone? Does anybody believe that in all of football? No, of course not. You'd be crazy to think it's Fletcher's fault. You know, I think there's people who, because I backed Amram, want me to sit there and say, oh, well, you know, Darren Fletcher couldn't get a win against Burnley. I'd be nuts to say that. I'd be nuts to say that. What does that have to do with anything? Darren Fletcher doesn't deserve the blame that was 2-2 versus Burnley, that we couldn't get 3 points there. He's not going to deserve the blame if we go out of the FA Cup. So how can you decide based on those games whether he should be manager or not? You know what I'm saying? Like what is there to suggest that where are we making a decision? Where are we making a decision here, right? And then I look at it and I go, somebody just needs to make a choice and be decisive. Just make a choice and be decisive. You know? Be decisive. No, look, I don't really buy the idea that delayed talks because of personal engagements. Like, what? Come on, man. Like, here's all I'm saying, all right? This is a serious appointment. We've heard briefings every single day about how Ollie would take the job for free. He'd drop everything to go do the job. And you're saying nobody can make time to get together and meet? Like, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? Like, even that is like, what? Excuse me? You know, I thought this was the opportunity of a lifetime. Now, today, you're getting reports that we might, that Fletcher's impressing, that it's gone well, that this might not be resolved until next week. What? Where's the plan? I'm sorry. Where's the plan? I understand if there's personal things. I understand. But like, you're getting, look, it's not just that. You're getting reports about lots of different things, It just, no appointment for interim managerial position is likely before Sunday game against Brighton. This is partly because Darren Fletcher has impressed so far. And then it's like, it's increasingly unlikely that they'll work together. The club will be patient with no urgent talks today. Why? Why no urgent talks today? Why patient? Look, one of the biggest lies, okay, in life, I'm going to say it. Here's life lessons, okay? One of the biggest lies in life is that it has to take a lot of time to make a decision. It's a total lie. It's a total lie. I'm just telling you that. I'm not saying people don't do it or people don't think it's true. I'm not saying that statement is a lie, that people want to be patient. There's no... I don't actually believe in like having to take a lot of time to make decisions helps you make better decisions. Since when? What does time give you? Seriously, what does time give you? What does time give you? Most of the time, all it does is allow you to introduce confusion to the situation. Right? You don't have to take your time to do things. You don't have to.
Let's face it, we still don't have top-level decision-making processes in the club. Depressing.
Right. But look, it's like not making a decision is also a decision, you know? But it's like, what are we doing here, man? Time makes you overthink things. Exactly. Genuinely speaking, you get, it's analysis paralysis, and everybody experiences it. The more you wait, the more you start thinking, well, what about this? Now, you can rush into decisions, but here's the truth of the matter. Okay.
The plan is Jason Wilcox to placating Jim's whims.
You know, it's like, yeah, maybe. The point I think is this, is that it has nothing to do with the time. It's about your ability to make a decision and your process for making decisions. You know what I'm saying? That's the point. What is your process for making a decision? If you have a process for making a decision, then time is irrelevant. It's how long does it take for you to do your process, and does your process make any sense? I think the reason we're all sitting here going, what's the point here? And I'm not saying like, oh, they should have hired somebody yesterday. I'm saying I don't see the clear process. What's the clear process for making a decision on this? Is it, if Darren Fletcher coaches a win against Brighton, we'll keep him? But how does that, I don't understand. How does that make any sense? You know what I mean? That's what doesn't make sense. If he loses, then you change it so that now that you're knocked out of a cup, you can cover that up by like, that's what it feels like from the outside. That's what it feels like is going on. You know what I mean? That's what it feels like is going on, is that personally, if I had to make a snap call right now, just keep Fletcher. I don't think it's going to make much of a difference, to be honest. I don't think it's going to make much of a difference. Just keep Fletcher in the job. He can manage the team. He's willing. His ideas are fine. His concepts are fine. He's got the experience. He knows the club. He's been here for a long time. You don't just stop complicating this. Just make a decision. There's no way you're going to figure out what's going to work out better in the future by overthinking it. Just make the call. Just keep Fletcher then. Like we don't have to do this, man. Just keep Fletcher. He's already there. Like, he's already there. We don't really have to overthink this. You know, we don't have to overthink this. There's logical decisions that are like, that can be made here. You know? You've put Fletcher in interim. You did that. You made that call the same day. Right? You made that call the same day. Trying to figure out whether it should be Fletcher or Ollie, who failed, or Carrick. Well, you should know already. You should know already what you want. What do you want? Are you hiring Ollie to win fans over? Because that feels wrong. Are you hiring Carrick because he's actually proven himself as a manager over the last few years and multiple jobs and maybe brings you something new? Well, if that's what you want, then get it. Or do you keep Fletcher because it provides you the most stability? My point is that I don't think you're going to learn anything about these guys in the next few days. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're not going to learn anything. They're all different. Ollie's not even a coach. So it's kind of like, you know, you're kind of looking at this like, we want Semenyo or Emi Martinez. No, they're not remotely similar, but we can't decide.
What do you mean? Desperate for job.
What do you think of Xavi? I don't think we're going to go anywhere near Xavi, to be honest.
The plan is hire an interim manager, which makes sense. Why does it matter if that process is 3 days or 6? Just chill. You don't know the process.
Because it does matter. They need to restore some confidence in the club for us right now. They need to restore confidence for us. You know what I'm saying? Like, it does matter how we feel. The confidence of the players, the stability, these things matter. They need to restore some confidence with some decisiveness, some decisive decision making. You're talking about completely different people. Show us evidence that there is a process. Because here's what doesn't make sense. Here's what doesn't make sense. And that doesn't mean doing what fans want. It means restoring confidence in the idea that you can make a decision. You don't do what fans want, but you do need to give people confidence that you can make a decision. Here's the reality, okay? There's no way to predict how the rest of the season is going to go. There's no way to predict how the rest of the season is going to go. None. There's none. You can't. No amount of time is going to show that, right? No amount of time waiting is going to guarantee that the choice is the right one. You understand that? None. Okay? They're three different people. You have three different reasons to decide. Right? You have to give credit at least to Chelsea. They sacked Maresca. You know that they're hiring Rosignor the next day. Literally the next day. On a 6-year contract. You got to at least give credit to that. You know? You have to make a decision. What is your priority? And this is my point for the long-term decision as well. And this is why it matters in the moment. You can't... How do I explain this? When they go to hire a manager for summer, they should not be hiring a manager. No. They should not be hiring a manager on the basis of... They should not be hiring a manager on the basis of, did that manager impress in an interview? I'm not saying we should hire a permanent manager today, but listen to me for a second. What are the similarities between Iraola, Glasner, Marco Silva, Pochettino, Thomas Tuchel, and, I don't know, McKenna and De Zerbi? What are the similarities? There's not a lot. Some of them have some similarities. Right? Some of them have some similarities. Some do. There's not a lot of similarities between them. You shouldn't be hiring a manager on the basis of interviews. I think that's one of the biggest mistakes we've been making. Oh, Ten Hag came in, and you remember how we heard about how they picked Ten Hag versus Pochettino at the time in that process. They came in and they interviewed. Okay, they came in and they interviewed. And it was like, well, Pochettino wanted players and Ten Hag said he was going to improve everybody. And then what happened? Ten Hag came in, demanded tons of signings. Do you guys remember the whole brief on that? That Ten Hag came in saying how he was going to improve all the players and they didn't hire Poch because he wanted too much money. And then Ten Hag came in, blew 300 million on shit players his first summer. Like, that's because interviews are bullshit. It's bullshit. You already can see the body of work of what these people bring to the table. That's factual. Interviews are bullshit. Everybody knows it. You hire for jobs. Interviews are bullshit. All you're trying to do is learn the personality, but that's because you don't know them anymore. You don't know who they are at that point in time. You don't know what they know. This isn't like that. You've already done your due diligence. You already know who these people are. You already know what their body of work is. You already know how they play football. You already know how they coach. You already know their style. You already know all of these things. An interview is just someone giving a sales pitch. And you can be fooled so easily by that. So my point is that it's not about, you need to have a vision. What manager do you want? The decision that has to be made is top down from the club first. What do we want? What type of person, what type of manager, what type of coach, what type of football, what type of everything. And then you hire who fits that. And you make a short list of just who fits that. And then sure, you could talk to them and make sure that your personalities aren't going to clash too much. That's fine. You can do that. But the first step and what they have to do, and it applies to the interim as it applies to the long term. And the fact that I feel we don't see it with the interim makes me uncertain that we're going to see it with the long term. It shouldn't be based on, well, how does the interview go with Ollie? How does the interview go with Carrick? Because they're totally different people. They're totally different coaches. So what is our foundation here for decision making? And what will our foundation be here for the next decision that we make? You know what I'm saying? That's why I'm concerned. And that's why we need to see something that fills us with some sort of confidence. Right? What for the interim, what do we want? Not who do we want? What do we want?
Indecisively, and it's called knee-jerk. They take one extra game to decide the interim and it's indecisive. Can't win.
Sacking Amram wasn't decisive, dude. It's the middle of the season. It's the opposite of decisive. Taking an action doesn't mean you're being decisive. Taking an action doesn't mean you're being decisive. Taking an action mid-season generally means that you're being indecisive at that point in time. You should have sacked him at the start of the season if you had doubts. You know, you should have sacked him earlier. We now hear all these stories about how they had months of doubts, months of conflict, months of issues. This is a mess. And if you had months of conflict, months of issues, months of problems, months of everything, right? Then why didn't you have anything lined up in case it blew up in your face? It's the definition of indecisiveness. It's a definition of being unprepared. It's a definition of not understanding where you're at, right? It was all reactive, not proactive discussion. They clearly didn't expect to crash out. Fine, but you gotta be serious for a second and look at what built up to that. Look at all the stuff that was going on. The cracks were obviously there. Everything was obviously there. Amram was saying he wanted to quit 3 months ago. How on earth did you not have a plan? When the guy's telling you, I don't want to be here. When the guy's telling you I'm miserable. When the guy's telling you this sucks. When the guy's telling you people are questioning my tactics and I don't like it. Amram's literally been telling you for 4 months he hates his job. And you have no plan? You have no backup plan? No, that's not being decisive. They were indecisive. You know who was decisive was Ruben Amram. He forced them to sack him. The fact that they were caught off guard is unbelievable. That is poor planning. They did not have a plan. They did not have anything lined up. And you could argue they already had disagreements with him. They decided not to recruit for him. They decided he needed to change his tactics. They were already doing that. And if you're doing that, you better have a backup plan. Because you're already thinking the manager's not going to work. Let's be honest. Let's be honest and not let these guys off the hook, okay? If they were not recruiting for him, if they were unhappy with results, if they were unhappy with his blow-ups, which had been going on for months, and if they were telling him to change formation, they were already deciding they're going to replace him at the end of the season. Right? They were already deciding that. So they should have had a contingency plan lined up. They should have had a contingency plan already lined up. They should have known what they wanted already, but they don't. They don't. That's what I'm talking about. So right now is the first chance where we say, are you going to learn from this experience? Okay? Are you going to learn from this experience? And if this experience taught you anything, it's that you need to stand there and say, what do we want out of this football club? What do we want out of this football club? What do we want moving forward?
They knew he was going at some point this year.
Yes, correct.
No plan is
Correct.
diabolical.
Correct. They absolutely did. They absolutely did, right? Or they should have, obviously. We all could see it. All of us are thinking we're going to reach March, April, and there's going to be conflict over his contract, conflict over his future, conflict over all of this. We all thought it anyway. Even if he was going to stay, they were going to have to talk about a new contract, right? So this was all should have been being discussed, you know, to be quite honest, we should have in January, since he was going into his next season, we should have been hearing about contract talks now for Amram if he had stayed. This would have been when. So yes, they should have been thinking about the future. They should have been thinking about what comes next. They should have had contingencies lined up, and they did not. Clearly, with all the doubts that they supposedly had. Okay. So that's part of it. But what they need to do now, what they have to do now, is be very, very decisive on this point. What do we want out of this club? What do we want out of this team? What do we want from this manager? What are we trying to accomplish to the end of the season? Do we need a coach? Do we need a manager? Do we need somebody who knows the club? Are we just looking for, PR? What are we trying to do? Whatever that answer is, they should already know. And that should teach who they are bringing in as manager. That should already answer it. Not whether Fletcher wins the next game, not whether Solskjaer interviews well, not whether Carrick this or that. They should know what they want and make that appointment based on that, because these are not similar people. And the same is going to go for summer when we're looking forward, because we're going to run into the same decision. We can't hire a person. You understand the point here? We can't hire a person. We cannot sit there and go, here's the person we need. First, you have to define what you want. First, you have to define what do we need. And then you have to build a list based on that, the exact same way that you are going to sign players, the exact same way everybody knows it. We need this position. These are the traits. These are the qualities. This is what we're looking for. Who fits it? Let's go get them. The manager's no different. The manager's absolutely no different. The manager's no different. Who is it? Because Thomas Tuchel is going to be nothing like Glasner. And De Zerbi is going to be nothing like Iraola. In terms of style of football, in terms of management style, in terms of character, in terms of the job, in terms of what they want, in terms of how they see it, in terms of any of that. They're all quite different. There are some that are similar. I think the two most similar managers, I think there's actually three of the most similar managers on there. In terms of experience, in terms of character, and in terms of profile. And that would be Thomas Tuchel, Pochettino, and De Zerbi. I think of the names that we've heard, those are the three most similar. That have the Premier League experience, that have the big club experience-ish, Marseille maybe, that have the personality aspects of dealing with the scrutiny, and have a very proactive style of football that are not just mid-table managers as of yet, as far as we've seen. You would see a lot of similarities there. Okay? McKenna is almost like his own category. He's almost like his own category. He's a very proactive manager who has a very clearly defined He's adaptable, no doubt, and has strong coaching principles. They're all coaches is one thing that I want to add to that, by the way. They are all people who are very active in the way that they coach. That's one of the other similarities between them, obviously. They're all very active in the way that they coach. McKenna doesn't have big club experience, but he does have United experience. So you have to question whether that's the same thing. As a head coach, or as a manager. He's never managed a big club, but he has worked at United under Jose, under Ollie, and done quite a few things. How are they going to fit within the structure? What are their jobs going to be? What are they not going to be? And then you have to find out who fits that first and define it. Because I don't see how you can decide between, Glasner, Iraola, and Tuchel. They're nothing alike. They are absolutely nothing alike. Like, what, that you're just picking a person, and that's why we fail. Wouldn't you guys agree this is why we have failed? We keep picking people. We're not hiring a job and then getting the right person for it. We're just hiring people at random based on whether they impress or not.
Proven, Enrique is elite.
You have to figure out, what are their, right, we need flexibility on PL proven. So you have to figure out what are your unshakable qualities? What are your unshakables? What are the, you will not compromise on? What are the things that matter a little bit less? Right? You have to decide that first. What are those things? That's what has to come first. That's what has to come first. So it seems like number one is going to be, Prem proven. Prem experience. That's number one. The non-negotiables. Yeah, non-negotiables. Premier League experience seems to be number one. Okay, so we're going to eliminate a ton of people. We're going to eliminate a ton of people on that basis. That's a fact coming out of the club. Premier League experience. That's number one. We're not getting people who aren't Premier League experienced. That's already a thought. Okay, that's already what they've said. So we start there. Number two. Are they a systems manager or do they adapt? That's a huge decision that seemingly we just got wrong because we hired an extreme systems manager.
You have been saying the manager does not impact the rebuild. Now that we've sacked Amorim, you're questioning INEOS. Stand by your word, James.
That's a very misleading statement. That's a very, very misleading statement. Very, very misleading. If you're rebuilding correctly, listen to everything I'm just saying. If you are rebuilding correctly, you can transition from one manager to the next. Okay? If you're rebuilding correctly, you can change managers without disaster. If you are abandoning it just to hire people, just to hire at random, then you're oscillating all the time, which is what Sir Jim talked about, that we're not supposed to oscillate from one style to the next, to the next, to the next. Sir Jim said that a year and a half ago, that the problem at United is that you have to keep oscillating, okay? Because we've gone from one manager to a different one, because we haven't had a club idea. That's what the rebuild was supposed to be. That's what we were sold on Amorim, okay? Is that it was an idea, and we picked Amorim to fit it. Now it turns out that wasn't true. We picked Amorim and then wanted him to change to a different idea. So let's say that they do have an idea now, right? And the idea is they always wanted to play 4 at the back, like 4-3-3 football. That's Wilcox's thing. 4-3-3, high pressing, attacking, possessionally dominant football. Okay, that's Wilcox's idea. Good. So that's a non-negotiable. Let's say we're going to align. I don't care if it's good. I don't care if it's the right idea. It doesn't matter. It's better to be aligned on some idea than misaligned on many ideas. So let's say that's the idea. Good. Then you can only get a manager that you know can play 4-3-3 attacking football with high pressing. All right. Well, Glasner's out. Sorry. He does not play high pressing football. Don't sit there and say, well, he could maybe, because he's not. And he hasn't in 5 years, and it wasn't really a high pressing brand of football then, and it was in the Bundesliga. In the Premier League, he's only played hyper defensive, low block, counter-attacking, transition football. Okay. So, cool. Don't compromise on that. Don't negotiate on that. Just stand by it. Okay? So I'm just giving you an example of how it should go and what it's supposed to be. You know, and obviously 4-3-3 attacking high pressing football is not exactly an entire philosophy, right? But I'm saying this is sort of how you'd have to think about it. Okay, good. So let's say you take that. You say, all right, well, let's take a huge list of every manager.
The manager always mattered for the rebuild.
Obviously, you have to have a manager who matches the rebuild. That's of course always been the point. You can't pick the wrong guy. The point is that if you pick the right guy, you can build regardless of whether the manager's amazing, good, the greatest manager on earth, and all of that. Let's say that that's what you're going to do. You have to make those decisions. You'd say, all right, cool. Look, Prem experience. We want guys who've managed in the Premier League in the last 5 years. They've been there. They understand the Premier League. They understand what they're doing. Okay, so there's like 40 guys we could pick from. Cool. So that we get our list of 40. All right. And then we go, hey, we want guys who have played and experience and know how to coach a 4-3-3 pressing team. All right. Which managers have play with a high press? Well, it's these 15. Okay. Now we have these 15. Okay, good. Now, which of them, play proactively and prioritize, utilizing attacking fullbacks? We want flying fullbacks. Okay. Then it's going to be these 5 guys. Okay, good. So now we have these 5 guys. All right. Now, maybe they all play a style of play. Okay, good. Now, do we want a system or an adaptable manager? Well, we might say in this case, it doesn't matter. If they're a system manager, but it's the system we want actually, and we're not just making it up as we go, then it's fine to get a system manager. Otherwise, it needs to be somebody who's shown the ability to adapt and has played in that system before. So we've got those 5. Cool. Now, what's next? What kind of manager do we want? Are they strong enough to deal with the press? Have they shown that they can deal with the pressure? Have they shown they can deal with the big clubs? Is that important to us? Let's say it is. Good. Then you bring it down to 2 or 3. You know what I'm saying? And you get those 3. And you say, cool, these are the 3. Now you interview those 3. Who do we get along with? What are their ideas? What do they think about the squad? How would they set the team up? And you narrow it down to that. The thing that never made sense about, for example, Ten Hag and Pochettino, when it narrowed down to those 2, is they were nothing alike. And the thing that never made sense about our list is we had like Lopetegui, Pochettino, Enrique, and Ten Hag. And you're going, what the fuck similarity is there between those 4 people? When we went to recruit managers back then, what similarity was there? None. There was nothing. It made no sense. I couldn't understand anything about what we were trying to do there. Like, it was just totally random. I'm not saying I know the exact qualifications, but what I'm saying is that's how you're going to actually build it and make a process. Okay? To get the right guy. And then of those 3, you're going to have to say to them, look, here's the job. You won't be able to decide on transfers. You won't have a veto. You won't have this. You don't get to pick the players that you want. We will let you sell players. If you think they're not going to be able to work with you, you can get rid of them. But if you have a preference for a player and we like a different one, ultimately, we're going to tell you who we sign. Who's going to accept that? So maybe out of those 3, one of them's like, nah, I'm out. Now you're left with 2, and you simply have to make a choice. Who do you get along with best? Who do you think would be best? All of that kind of stuff. That's a process. That's how you're going to take this giant list and narrow it down to a small list. Okay? That's how you're going to finish it. That's how you're going to figure this out. So one of the things where I'm not super negative is when I looked at last year, when we were going to sack Erik ten Hag, our list actually made sense. And I believe that it's to a funny degree. Emram lost his powers along the way. He did, yeah. He obviously started with more control and lost it as it went, which was a strange way to operate as a club. Like, that lack of consistency is crazy. But like what I'm saying here is that you know, if you look at this club in general, then when we were replacing Ten Hag before the interviews we did made a lot of sense. If you think about that as some of the original concepts, because the only people involved then were Sir Jim and Wilcox, and they're still there. And they're both still there. And Wilcox ended up not having a say at that time. Like, I could sit here and bash Jason Wilcox, and I can bash this guy and bash that guy, whatever. It doesn't matter. I don't intend to do that and be like a super over-the-top person on this front. That's not who I am. I don't want to do that. But at the same time, I'm just saying, if it's going to be Wilcox, good. What is his idea? Well, last time when we were looking to replace Ten Hag, it came down to a few names that did kind of make sense. It was Thomas Tuchel, Pochettino, McKenna, and De Zerbi. Those were the four of the main candidates for the job at that point in time. There was a 4-man short list. I remember it kept narrowing down and it ended up with just 4. And you go, okay, well, think about everything I just said. Premier League experience, they all fit that. Can play in an attacking 4-3-3. They all fit that. Fairly adaptable. I would say De Zerbi's maybe the most dogmatic of them, but they're all fairly adaptable. Big club experience. Well, all of them except McKenna, right? All of them except McKenna. And then McKenna had United experience. Thomas Frank was kind of eliminated from the list as well. Maybe that's because he didn't have big club experience. Maybe that's all it does.
This just sounds like a lot of copium for being wrong in your assessment of Amorim as a manager. I still believe the INEOS rebuild is on track. They were just wrong with their first manager choice.
Brother, they've been wrong about a lot. We've sacked 2 managers and a director of football in 18 months' time. 14 months' time. We've sacked 2 managers and a director of football. They've been wrong on everything. Every big call has been wrong. That's not the actions of people who have made the right decisions and know and have a clear idea, right? That's not. I'm sorry. We've sacked 2 managers and a sporting director in 14 months after hiring him and waiting 6 months too. I'm sorry. As much as I would like to be positive, this goes to show there wasn't a plan, especially a lot of the stuff that's come out since. Can they still fix it? Of course. Can they still get it right? Of course. But now is when we need to see the signs that there is a proper process moving forward. Okay? We need to see some of the times when there's a proper process moving forward. The big calls have been wrong. And obviously they've not been done by a process. So the evidence shows that it's not a process. Okay? So again, when we had those main guys,
not 14 months.
Well, I'm not counting
time with Nice.
I'm not counting Nice because you're talking. I'm less talking about INEOS. I'm talking about Omar Barada, Dan Ashworth, Jason Wilcox, and all of these guys together. Like, yes, INEOS are there, but you have these guys as appointments right now who are supposed to do this. There needs to be a process at United. There needs to be a process at United.
Yet you haven't questioned them till Amorim was fired.
No, I questioned them. I questioned them for keeping Erik ten Hag at the time. I said that was a huge mistake at the time. And then I said, all right, good. So you made that big mistake. Are you going to correct it by getting it done properly? It looked like they had. And now that clearly they haven't, and new information comes to light, you change your opinions. That's, again, it's called being an adult. When you observe new things, when new things happen, when you see new things, you have to change your view. This is a new thing that has happened. You should change your opinion based on new information. You should change your opinion when things happen. This is another thing that has now happened. And I question them a lot for not investing in January. For the last months, I've been talking about how they have to. So, look, the reality is that
they need time to pick between Ole, Carrick, and Fletcher, all of whom are very well known to them. That's the hallmark of indecision.
That's what I'm saying. This shouldn't really take a lot of time. They should really know. Yeah, look, I'm still pro a lot of things that have happened. You know what I mean? Like, I still believe there's a ton of stuff that has improved over time. I'm still in the firm belief that a lot has happened. I'm still quite pro them. I see people saying they're worse than the Glazers and things like that, and I'm thinking that's being overly reactive. No way. So many things have improved. Recruitment has improved. A lot of stuff behind the scenes has improved. They saved the club from the brink of financial ruin. There's a lot of things that have improved. But there are things that are just not there right now, that we do not have evidence of success in, that we do not have evidence of clear choices in. You know, that's the reality of it. And there's so many things that, correct. I talked about it exactly that, Ty. So I went after them pretty heavy on the idea that they could not sign players in January, well before Amarim was fired. The medical aspects of things, the fitness aspects of things, the rebuilt Carrington, these things matter. These things matter. Okay. And there are good things. And there are lots and lots of good things that a lot of these guys have done. And there's a lot of good people at United who are doing good things and are in a tough position right now because plenty of what's going on isn't their fault, you know? And the struggles that we're having aren't their fault. And look, the calls that these guys are messing up are truly the toughest calls in football. There's been 2 successful managers at Manchester United in its history. 2. It's not easy, man. It ain't easy. How many successful managers have Liverpool had in the last 30 years? How many successful managers have Chelsea had out of how many they've hired in the last 40 years, 50 years? You know, how many? It's not that many. You know, when PSG have taken over, but when PSG were taken over, how many managers did they go through? How many players did they go through until they get it right? It's not easy to make these calls. It's not easy to make these calls. It's not that simple always to get it exactly right. But what we want to see is some sort of consistency and decisiveness, you know, in general. You know, that's the reality of it. We want to see some consistency and decisiveness moving forward. And we need evidence of that because right now it feels like we're moving backwards at times when we need to be moving forwards. But I think that our process this time is probably going to look really similar to the process last time. You know, it wasn't mid-season. We were actually, you know, it's kind of funny because it was like post-FA Cup and they took weeks interviewing, meeting with people. They met with De Zerbi. They met with Thomas Tuchel. They met with Pochettino. They met with a bunch of people. They met with Kieran McKenna. They did all of this. You know, Wilcox went and had discussions with a bunch of people. You know what I mean? And, you know, they did all of that. And so, you know, there was a process at that time. The problem is we didn't follow it through. And one of the reasons we didn't follow it through, which is kind of hilarious, is that our process, and this is why the process needs to change, is that the process was bad. Okay? Because a couple of things happened. When we went through that whole process last time to replace Ten Hag and then ended up keeping him, why? Because the managers, we had 2 problems. One, we eliminated managers where it cost too much to pay them. Like, for example, Pochettino had a big exit clause, no competition thing with Chelsea, where it would have cost a ton of money, right? Just an example. And for the managers that we ended up putting to like our short list, they rejected us. They rejected us, not because they never want to coach United, but it was a polite, like, it was kind of a polite, like, yeah, no, you guys don't know what you want yet. You know what I mean? Like, it was like, they basically all said, it's not you, it's me. And then McKenna signed a new contract at Ipswich. De Zerbi took our contract to Marseille and said, pay me more money than they will. Thomas Tuchel said, I don't think this is for me, guys. I don't think you're ready for me. I don't think you can handle me and my alleged dungeons and freakiness. Like they all said, it's not you, it's me. And so they need to think about this a little bit and say, none of these managers wanted to join us. Maybe I need to reassess what I'm doing. Maybe I need to reassess what we're doing and get people. You know what I mean? Maybe we need to reassess why these guys don't want the job. Our terms that we're offering them, is anybody going to want to accept this? Is anybody going to want to accept the job under these conditions? You know what I mean? Is anybody going to want this kind of job? Right? And if so, like, are any of the guys that we want going to want the job? But I do think the process will be similar, and that's why I think the names will be similar. That's why I think the names will be similar. I think the names will be similar last time. I think the names will be much similar. Much more similar. And that means if we hire them and it doesn't work, then it's easy to transition to the next guy. That's the point. If you go, like, I'll just use examples, okay? But if you were to go Thomas Tuchel, and then you sacked him later on and you got McKenna, that's not a crazy transition. It's not. It's actually really simple because you build the same team for both of them and it wouldn't be a problem. And that's really what, if you really want to condense it into one statement, that's what it should be. Would we build the same team for all of these managers or not? And if the answer is no, then take that person out of the pool. That's really the defining quality. If you were looking for the gold standard, can we build a team for all of these managers? That would be my question. I think you could do that for De Zerbi, Tuchel, Pochettino, McKenna, and that's why they make sense. Then you say, good, are they experienced? Can they handle it? And that would be another question. So there's a lot of ways to define this, but you just have to have a process. You just have to have a process. That's all. And then you'd have to break it down to would they accept your terms and conditions exactly. And that's the question. That's what we don't know yet. Me personally, I'd be fine with McKenna. From what I've heard about him personality-wise, I don't think he would struggle. He's got the experience of being at United. He essentially ran tactics for the club as the main coach for a long time. He's had experience in the Premier League now. And I think he could handle it. And all of that. Clubs like Bayern don't have a problem attracting managers, even though they have no say in things and typically last 12 months. They do have a problem attracting managers. They also have a problem keeping them. That's why they ended up with Company. But they also have a very clear system behind them, and they also have the benefit of it being a one-team league. You can sleepwalk into a league title. It's very easy. It's a very different situation recruiting for Bayern than it is for a Premier League club. It's a totally different world. It's like the complications that go into hiring one of these other guys is like, whatever. one of these other leagues is just kind of crazy. You know, it's like it's just it's so incomparable, unfortunately. The Premier League is its own animal, and I think that's kind of the point. It's its own beast. You know, Bayern haven't been that successful, by the way. Like if you think of Bayern, that winning the Bundesliga is practically a given, and success is defined by Champions League, how successful are they over the last 15 years? How successful are they? Not very successful. It's not actually working for them. You know, PSG floundered over and over and over until they got Enrique. And it's sort of worked out so far, but they also had to replace their sporting directors and get Luis Campos. And, you know, maybe they lucked into the right thing at the right time. They also still have the benefit of it being a one-team league. You know, so it's not that easy for these other clubs to do that. It's not like it's just so simple, you know. It's just not so simple. So, I think that, yeah, like I said, there just needs to be a process, and I think that we should see that process. And what concerns me is that they're different right now. I feel like they're different right now. Like, easily, you should be able to define what kind of person we need for the rest of the season. Do we need a coach or not, guys? Because that's going to decide whether it's Carrick or Ollie. Do we need a coach or not? That's all. That would be my question number one. Do we want a coach? Because then you go Carrick. Do we not? Then you go Ollie. Like, I feel as though that answer should already be answered and we shouldn't even be thinking about it. It doesn't even make sense anymore. You know, that's where I feel like we're still hiring people. Look, it's an interim decision, all of that, fine. I get it's not that serious. So fine, whatever. Point is that all I'm saying is that I think it would help to show a bit of decisiveness now, and that there is a clear plan and a clear definition of what you're trying to accomplish that everybody agrees upon, and that would fill everybody with confidence. Doesn't mean it has to be what we want. Doesn't mean it has to be what anybody else wants. Doesn't mean it has to be, you know, there's no way to guarantee it's the right choice. But what are your defining conditions for making a decision? I just want to see that. We need that right now, because right now it feels like the club are floundering. And there are question marks over people's heads right now. And which is fair for there to be question marks on people's heads. But how do they respond to that? Do they respond to that by being indecisive?
For me, make Carrick the
and
permanent
worried?
coach. He's willing to build and suffer. Unfortunately, he won't put up with Wilcox's interference.
The thing about Carrick, from my understanding, just for what it's worth, is I don't think Carrick wants the permanent job. I believe Carrick would rather coach at a lower league after coming here. So again, that's why I'm saying, like, this decision should be easily definable if you know them. You know what I mean? I believe Carrick would be happy to do 6 months and go to a lower league club. Ollie's going to want the permanent job. So I'm just saying you've just got to figure that out to a degree already. Carrick is he's a bit more low key. I don't think he wants to deal with what comes with United. That's at least as far as I've heard. And I've said that before. Why I would say that. That's what I've heard before about Carrick. That's what some other people have said about Carrick. That's just my belief. I could be wrong. I'm not sitting there like saying I know 100% what these guys are thinking. There's guys that have much closer relationships to these guys, but I'm just saying Ollie wants the permanent job if he gets it. He wants to be able to earn the permanent job. Carrick would be very much 6 months and gone. So that's why I think these types of decisions should be rather easy to make, because you should be able to define based on things like that, who's the right pick anyway. You should define that. So look, it doesn't matter though. It's fine. Like what I'm saying all now, obviously opinion based. Obviously, we're in times that feel rough. We're in 7th now. League looks really tight. It looks scary. We could obviously get up the table and drop down the table. We all know that. We don't feel like we're getting signings this window. As a fan, right now, I'm not feeling my best at the moment about things. And so yeah, I've got concerns. These are my concerns. These are my opinions on the matter. But I do think the most important thing is to show us a process for moving forward. And when we go to select a manager in the long term, not only does there have to be a process, but I think it needs to be very, very proactive as well. And that has to factor into it. You should also be making a decision. Do we need to appoint a manager before mid-July or not? And that does matter, by the way. It does matter. Like, one could make the argument that it would be fine to wait until August or end of July to confirm your manager. One could argue that that would actually be a disaster in terms of how it'll affect next season. One could argue you should be able to wait. But that's, again, one of those decisions that has to be made now. If we cannot hold talks with the manager until after the World Cup, do we eliminate them? Or do we keep them and we wait until after the World Cup to even figure it out? Because personally, I think we need to have this decided by March or April. Even if they're going to be in a job and through the World Cup, it needs to be agreed ahead of time, like it was with Louis van Gaal. That would be fine. So, but these are decisions that have to be made ahead of time, right? And again, as a part of this whole process. So we'll see, man. Right now, I'm at my most worried at the moment. Obviously, I'm at my most concerned. I'm at my most negative about it, because it just feels like we're not. It doesn't feel good. Like, there's been nothing to bounce us back and say, this feels like we can get something. You know what I mean? There's been nothing to bounce us back and say, it feels like this is just a blip and we're heading in the right direction. And I know it's just been a few days, but it hasn't, there just needs to be something. Some sort of, we can't be sitting here in we're I just think we can't sit here being in so many maybe situations, so many unknowns. We don't know who's going to manage next week. We don't know who's going to manage next year. That's going to take a few months. We don't even know who's going to manage next week. We got to at least answer one of these questions now, okay? So listen, I wanted to show you guys something else too, because I've been thinking about this a lot, and I might make a full video on this. Because, I didn't do a tactical breakdown on, the Burnley game yet and things like that. But one of the things that I wanted to show, is you get this perspective from Burnley, right? When you look at the stats, people talk about this, and they're correct, right? We've heard this before. We got unlucky. They have 7 shots. They have 1 shot on target. They score. They score 2 goals on 1 shot on target. How does this keep happening? How does this keep going on? And you start to think well, it was just unlucky. And the point I was making the other day is that I was happy with the performance against Burnley, but we're not getting unlucky. We've been having this unlucky all season. I showed the example here. If you just go by the stats of United versus Everton, right? In the post-match game, I showed this near the end. If you go by the stats versus Everton, it's the same story. 0.21 expected goals, 1 shot on target, 1 goal, top corner, right? It's the same story. You look at the shot maps. It's hilarious. And we lost 1-0. And you go, well, why are we so unlucky? Why are we so unlucky? And the fact of the matter is we're not unlucky. It's actually really, really Oh, bastard. Hold on. It's really quite simple. Okay. And I'm going to show you a bunch of different moments in this. And you guys tell me what you think, because this is what I've seen. Okay. This is what I've seen from the game. So like what I went through is I went through against Burnley, our shots from top of the box versus their singular one that went in the net. Okay. And you're going to see it. It's quite incredible, actually. So this is our first one that we get 44 minutes or so into the game. Ugarte gets this shot on target, from top of the box. Now, a couple notable things here. Number one, it's Ugarte. It's not one of our forwards getting an open shot. So this is the one shot of the game. They're not closing us down, but I want you to see one thing and one thing only about this as well that stands out. Aside from it being Ugarte, there is one other incredibly notable thing, and sometimes football is this simple. It's a right-footed player shooting from the right across goal. Okay? A right-footed player shooting from the right across goal. Okay. Now, let me find the next image. And he just barely misses, but it's also not a forward. But it's a right-footed player shooting from the right, not the left, from the right, from the top of the box across goal. The next one I'll show you. And I'm specifically talking about like why we concede like bangers only and we don't score them. You know what I'm saying? And I'll show you the next one, because this is the next shot. Comes a couple minutes later from Matheus Cunha from the top of the box. And I'm going to show you this one now too. Watch. Okay? I want to show you exactly how Burnley defend this. It's very, very different, okay, than how we defend these types of shots, okay? Cunha gets the ball in this position, okay? They show him, he's right-footed. They show him outside, not inside. They show him outside. They block the inside, and they force him onto his left. And you see how they're blocking the inside. They're showing always to the outside foot. Every team that defends us at the top of the box pushes us to our outside foot. That's basics of defending. Push the attacker to their outside foot. Not their inside foot, but their outside foot. That's pretty, this is like one of those simple basics of defending that we do not do. Burnley, you can see in every single instance that I'll show, and I have 4 or 5 to show, they show us to the outside foot. So we're either shooting on a weak foot or we're going outside foot across goal from distance. That's a tough goal to score, usually through traffic, okay? And they're challenging those shots time after time, okay? Shot after shot, they're challenging them. And you see the position that Cunha has to shoot here. He's never going to score. Never going to score, all right? Never going to happen. Now let's find the next one, okay? I'll find it for you again. And you'll see it's the exact same situation. Comes here for Patrick Dorgu. All right, ready? Patrick Dorgu, okay? Once again, receives the ball in this position. He's left-footed. He's on the left. I think it's a mistake, again, for the same reason. Right, you learned this in high school, correct. Kyle Walker, who's finished these days, still understands this basics of football. He stands to the inside of Patrick Dorgu and shows him to his outside foot. The other player comes across to challenge so that you can't cross into your inside foot. And Patrick Dorgu has to take a shot across goal. You can see it's all blocked on the inside. Everything's on the inside, okay? Everything's on the inside. Everything is shown to the outside foot, okay? And this happens time and time again, but we'll see. But just let me get through it and I'll show you, because it's really quite interesting to see how often it happens, right? Here, look, we've seen this before, right? This is the goal that gets scored on us. Jadon Anthony, look at Lissandro. He turns his back and he's showing him the inside, and covering for the outside. The exact opposite of how Burnley defended us. The exact opposite. Now, if you go back to the goal Everton scored, this goal scored by Morgan Rogers, the goal scored by even at Bournemouth, they all are doing this time and time again. I remember discussing this last season, that Dowlow constantly does it. He shows players the inside and is covering the run down the line, right? He's covering the run down the line and he's showing them inside. And that's exactly what we do here. Lissandro turns his back, looks for the run to go down the line. You show him inside. Instead, he cuts in and bang. Look, you're showing him the inside right onto his left foot, curls it in. These are professional footballers in the Premier League. They can all make this shot. And I'm going to give you that evidence, evidence in our favor a moment later. Ready? But hold on. I've got a couple more to show you. But that's what we did. We show him to the inside. Now, we'll watch again right here. I'm watching Xerxes, top of the box, okay? He's trying to make his move. He was trying to cut back inside. What does Ugo Chukwu do in this situation? He just stays on the inside of him. Doesn't turn his back, stays inside of him, forces him back onto his left foot. Kyle Walker stays inside, forces him onto his left foot so he can't go right foot curler, and he has to shoot left-footed, and he can't score. Again, same situation, right? Exact same. Now, just a few moments later, literally seconds later, right? Hold on, I'm just pulling it up so you can see it. Seconds later, Shea Lacey. Literally seconds later, Shea Lacey. Look what happens. It's the same thing that we did. Defender doesn't maybe understand Shea Lacey, right? Turns his back, covers the run down the line instead. Boom, inside. Inside shot goes off, right? Let me just switch it so that it doesn't have continuity. Shows him inside, shows him onto his strong foot, and Shea Lacey, with 10 professional minutes as a footballer, hits the bar. Why? Because every good forward in this league can make that shot. Morgan Rogers, who was it that did it for Everton? I can't remember now. Jaden Anthony, they can all hit that shot. We are showing everybody the inside, and the defenders are showing us to the outside, even Burnley. That's why we keep conceding bangers only. We could have scored that shot. It was off the bar. But my point is, that is a player with 10 professional minutes of football. And if you show him inside with the space at the top of the box there, he will hit it. This is basic stuff. And this is why we are unlucky.
Anyone know mechanism for Glazers to boot INEOS?
And that's why I've said routinely recently, it's not going to change without new players. Because these are basics our players do not do. It's just not good enough. So yes, we will very often get unlucky. How could we get a bit more lucky? Who could help us? Maguire and De Ligt. There you go. You got it, bikers. That's exactly what I was going to say, by the way. That's exactly what I was going to say. There are two players who do it consistently, and we're missing both of them. And it's one of the reasons our defense has gotten so much worse in the last couple of weeks. De Ligt and Maguire. And when they come back, they should be the two starting center backs because they're the only center backs who do this consistently, who step out. And yeah, sometimes they'll get turned, but they will look to block that angle more consistently than anybody else. They're the two most professional defenders that we have at the team, at the club right now. Heaven is young. Lenny is young. Lissandro, I don't know. Maybe it's just the injury and the focus and things like that. The midfield's not doing it too, don't get me wrong, but Maguire and De Ligt will make us better on that front. When they return, I do believe that we will do better. I do believe that we will get better defending, that they will be better at it because Maguire's one of the better box defenders in the league, and he has been for a long time because this is some fundamentals he understands. But yeah, it's kind of crazy. Like it's just fundamentals. Anyone know mechanism for the Glazers to boot INEOS? Sell to somebody else, I guess. But that's about it. So look, I don't think we're gonna get lucky. I don't think we're gonna stop being unlucky, I should say, at any point in time here. I don't think we're going to start getting lucky randomly, that we're going to, that it's all going to be okay or something like that. But yeah, it's just, this is pretty much it right now. There's a reason this is happening. There's a reason this is happening. It's not unlucky. It's poor defending. It's been happening all year. And I don't expect it to change. That was my point on it's like, you can say Burnley was such an incredible performance. The bad man's gone. Suddenly everything's going to be fine. And we just got unlucky. No, we didn't. It was a good performance. We're capable of that. We've seen good performances this year, but they can be undone by that in a heartbeat, as we've seen before. As we've seen before, it can be undone in a heartbeat. They will make those defending mistakes time after time, as we've just seen. And that's why we're getting so unlucky. I hope it changes. I hope if De Ligt and Maguire return in a back four, that maybe it's better. But yeah, it's a problem. It's definitely a problem right now that we are dealing with and that we are facing. And I don't expect it to change too much. But I just wanted to cover that because I was looking at it and I was like, all right, well, why didn't I just do this? Why didn't I just analyze all our long shots? That was all our long shots in the game. Those were all the long shots at the top of the box. We're getting shown outside, wrong-footed, cross goal into traffic versus showing players to their inside to curl it. And the one time we got that opportunity was Shea Lacey, and he nearly scores it, and he hits it off the bar. So it is what it is, but that's something we have to fix. That seemingly we can't because we just don't have the players to fix it. Tracking the runners from the midfield is the other thing with Casemiro in there. It's just never happening. Leaving free men in the box all the time. Whatever. I've commented on that enough. Okay. Anyway, that's what I have to talk about today. Let's see what happens. It looks as though Darren Fletcher could end up being in the job for a while, maybe to the end of the season if he keeps winning. Or if it keeps, well, he's not winning, but maybe. I don't know what the decision-making process is now. Nobody does. So, don't know. I guess we'll see. Right now, we have no idea. But we really need to see evidence of a clear process.
For all of you guys, we are fucked.
We just need to see a clear decision-making process moving forward. And really, for the end of the season, we need to see that. And ideally, if we could make some signings this month, it would help us a lot. But I do expect that our process or who we're going to get at the end of the season is not going to look that different than the names we had last time. So, which we kind of didn't follow through on, which was a little bit funky. But I hope they've learned something from that. Okay? Thank you all. I'll be back tomorrow for pre-match and things like that. I'll be back for pre-match. I'll be back for later. Tomorrow, and we'll go from there. All right. Goodbye, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day. See ya.